It's just always great to know. Great marketing is a conversation between data and intent. Goals will keep us grounded. Strategy will guide us, but the tactics are going to be the ways that we adjust the sails based on the ways that the wind is shifting. And so we always need to ask ourselves, is what we're doing serving the mission, or is there another way that we need to build momentum?
Hey, Colin. So, in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about how goals, strategy, and tactics all work together. These are really important pieces when working in marketing. So, we're just going to go through a couple of questions here. But the first thing that we see really often is that people jump right into tactics. I notice a lot of teams do this. Why do you think people tend to jump into tactics first thing?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. We do see a lot of teams do this. And to me, the most consistent two things that I've seen really be the bias or reason why that pops up is one is deadline pressure. And so you oftentimes get a lot of pressure from leadership. And if you ask them when they want something live, they're always going to tell you yesterday. And the team is always trying to launch, whether it's a new piece of ad or a new sequence from your CRM or a new landing page. To them, just putting something in motion feels like you're making progress. The other piece of it is having something tangible. And so you can always like screenshot whether it's the ad you created or the funnel, and hopefully people are moving through it. But you're not necessarily going to hang up a picture frame of your messaging framework. And unless the whole team from leadership to sales and marketing are aligned and celebrating like the roadmap that you put together as much as they are celebrating the messaging that you're putting out there and actually shipping your marketing materials out there, you're never going to be aligned, and you're always going to default to like what is visible. So the way that I try to safeguard that with clients is when I have a kickoff deck that I'm putting together, the first two slides in that kickoff deck are outlining what is the outcome of this campaign or strategy that we're putting together, and who are we talking to? Who is the ICP? So if those two things aren't crystal clear to everyone, then we definitely need to delay the conversation around the creative assets or the messaging that we're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like a lot of people jump into tactics, like you said, sometimes to get leadership off of their back, or they're just trying to really do stuff quickly. But we definitely need to go back a step and make sure we're aligned on who is this for and what's our ultimate goal. So let's maybe dive into that a little bit more. What does a strong alignment between a goal, strategy, and tactics actually look like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to like the business outcome, right? That is your goal. That is the North Star that everyone on the team is reaching towards, because that is what leadership is saying. This is what the company needs to achieve. So we always need to start from the top, and that is goals and then strategy and then tactics. And so when leadership is coming to you and saying, hey, our goal is generating $2 million in qualified pipeline, just as a random example, for mid-market SaaS companies by Q4. So great, smart goal there. We know what the entire business is trying to achieve. Great business outcome, right? Then we need to go directly to the strategy. That is step number two in this entire process. So who do we need to talk to, and what type of like channels are they on? We'll get into that in a little bit. So we're targeting growth leaders, we're targeting operations people, we're targeting people in product marketing or RevOps, and we have to use insight-led content and tailor that outreach. And that leads us into the next step, which is the tactics. So for an example, let's put together a series of emails and test out some messaging with them. Let's tie on LinkedIn messages into that. Let's get some posts out on our social media so that all of these pieces align. Let's maybe use some retargeting advertising, or try and get maybe really low in the funnel with some Google advertising that are keyword based. What are we going to test as a CTA? Is it let's book a strategy call? How is this all feeding into the CRM? Every piece of all this elevates back to that business outcome. That's the goal, right? And so whether it's getting a calendar book or making a new ad design or trying to test out that messaging tweak or the CTA, you need to be able to trace that all back to that strategy. And if you can't align that strategy and that tactic to the main goal within, like, let's say 30 seconds, then it's probably time to take a step back and just get yourself realigned.
Yeah, thanks for diving into that more. I think it's really important to nail down those first two steps first. Make sure you have a really clear understanding of who you're really trying to target And then the other pieces tend to fall in pretty easily. Okay, so when do you feel like is the right moment to adjust the strategy and not just the tactics?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on what that strategy is and the tactics that you're testing out, but there's certainly some red flashing lights that'll happen across the board. And if you're looking at our audience is getting a little fatigued, or you're reaching a plateau, a lot of times in B2B technology specifically, an audience can be very niche. You could be talking to just a handful of people, and you can't let them get tired of seeing your messaging. So the ad frequency can be a big signal. You're seeing engagement drop. The list that you're reaching out to is kind of been exhausted. You might need to take a step back and say, maybe we're not talking to the right people. Maybe we need to expand the persona. Maybe we need to dive into a different industry or a different market. The next thing is if you're running ads, let's say, and your cost per lead is like doubled 2 weeks in a row, or you're looking at it on a monthly basis and it just keeps doubling, but it's not leading to a big growth in your pipeline and your customer acquisition cost is just growing and growing. That is a structural tweak. That means you need to go back to your strategy. Like that's not just changing the one line in your ad creative. Then another thing that happens, and it's been happening more and more recently, is a market shift. So that can mean a new competitor is coming into the space and maybe they have a big budget that they're really ready to spend. Maybe there's a pricing difference. Maybe there's a new piece of regulation that has come into play that is really changing the priorities of your buyers. You always need to be on top of all of that. And so when one of those red lights is going off, you need to like take a pause on, I'm not just going to change the subject line or the ad copy, but I need to know on this journey, does the destination still matter to the person that is on the journey? Or do you need to change the route entirely?
Yeah, I think that jumps in really well to this next question is how do you keep these marketing strategies or plans structured but still flexible enough to adapt if you are noticing changes in the market, like maybe a new competitor or some user behavior changes?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's like the ever-evolving problem for a marketer, right? Because you don't want to just necessarily turn things off because then you're going to lose data capture, but you also don't want to waste money. So then do you prioritize more of an organic channel? But you kind of need to break it up in between what is fixed and what is fluid. And so if you're looking at things that are fixed, that'll be like your revenue target. Again, like the goals. What is the ICP that we are reaching out to? What is your North Star KPI that is like, if we are achieving this, we are moving in the right direction? The only thing that is going to change that is if leadership is coming down and saying there's something new we need to focus on. The things that are fluid are those tactics, right? So it's like, do we need to try a new channel? Do we need to try a new mix of channels and combine how we're messaging and making sure that we're hitting people in the right time when they're there? Do we need to kind of widen the scope of how we're putting all of this messaging out there? Is there a new creative angle? Like, are people really resonating with a different call to action as we're seeing maybe discovery calls are getting a little bit saturated in the market, and so we really need like a tangible offer because people are doing so much research? Do we need to split budgets between a few different ad channels to see maybe people are spending more time on LinkedIn than they are searching things on Google? Or do you need to try something out of the bag like a Reddit type tool or something else? So just looking at like, how can we get fluid with these tactics, but the fixed part of it is always the strategy. So that'll help you stay structured because you know what you're always trying to achieve, but you're being flexible by updating and optimizing your approach. And that's not just changing a subject line in an email, but that can be, we need to try this whole new channel altogether.
So just to recap, we kind of view goals and strategy as fixed unless there's maybe a really big market shift. And then the tactics would be the thing that's more fluid that we're going to adjust.
Well, strategy would fall somewhere in the middle, right? Because
Okay.
you can always outline a strategy and it could be a month or 3 months or 6 months down the line, you realize, hey, this isn't working. And we've tried a few different tactics. So we have the data to dictate we need to go back to the drawing board. I would say your goals should stay fixed for a little bit longer of a period. You should probably have those for 6 months to a year, but your strategy is going to be kind of rigid, but also kind of flexible. It falls somewhere in the middle. Tactics should be changing all the time based on the data that is coming in. Even if you find something that is really working and you want to pour kerosene on that fire and just let it burn, do not put all your eggs in one basket. You need to constantly be testing something out while that one channel is just performing like crazy.
Awesome. So, how can you tell if a problem is tactical or strategic?
Yeah, so everything is signal based, right? And so you have to have like kind of signal checks that you're always keeping a pulse on. If you're looking at your audience and the signal is like a low click through rate or the pipeline isn't getting much movement, then the way you need to read that is, are we talking to the wrong people? Do we need to get new titles into this? Are we even talking to the right industry? Does the intent stage match with who we're talking to and when we're talking to them? So that is a switch in the strategy. You need to either tighten or expand the ICP and then rebuild your targeting list. When you're looking at your messaging, you might be getting some clicks on some ads, but they're getting to the landing page and they are not converting. They are not filling out the form, which is a big thing. I know I do a bunch of research. I go to a lot of different websites. I kind of don't want to fill out every form that I see because then I'm just going to get loaded up with emails. So we really need a strong offer to entice them. So the read is like the pain point that you initially clicked on does resonate. But when I get to the landing page, the value proposition isn't compelling enough, or it's not like, you know what, I do need to fill this out because I really need this bit of information, or I really need to talk to this person. And that is a tactical switch. So you're going to rewrite the headlines on the landing page. You might move the form. You might test a new offer. The last one is going to be kind of like channel economics. So keeping your eye on, is the cost per lead like really growing, and the deal size or velocity of deals moving through the pipeline is kind of staying stagnant, then the math isn't mathing, unfortunately. And you're going to be overspending and maybe breaking even, sometimes worse. And that is another signal to move back to strategy, because you need to shift to something lower cost, maybe a little bit higher intent, or maybe even higher in the funnel. And you need to like retouch or come up with new messaging back to your sequences, but that will shift in your overall strategy before you get into that tactical piece of it. So I always love analogies. Marketing loves them as well. So I would say if the compass is off, you need to recalibrate it. But if your wheels are wobbling on your car, then you're going to have to tighten the bolts.
That's awesome, Colin. We need to get like some designs of all of these analogies you have. You come up with them every time we talk.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights on the differences between goals, strategies, and tactics and how they all work together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just always great to know. Great marketing is a conversation between data and intent. Goals will keep us grounded. Strategy will guide us, but the tactics are going to be the ways that we adjust the sails based on the ways that the wind is shifting. And so we always need to ask ourselves, is what we're doing serving the mission, or is there another way that we need to build momentum?
Great. Another great analogy. Thanks, Colin.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Baylee.
Thanks for checking out Tech Qualified. This show is brought to you by New North, a marketing agency that helps turn your small, scrappy marketing team into a growth engine. To find out more about New North or check out more episodes of this show, go to newnorth.com/techqualified.